warriors. Now let's get to the actual siege. They come with a tremendous force. At least 185,000, but more than that, for certain more than that, because they have conquered or sieged Lachish, and they took Lachish, which was a fortified city to the south and to the west of Jerusalem, on its way up to Jerusalem. They took it in less than a month. Okay, now what's a siege? A siege was a way of taking a city. They would sometimes surround it or enclose it from any kind of help from the outside, meaning they couldn't get any food, any water, they couldn't get in, they couldn't get out, they were stuck there. And what they tried to do, usually, was starve them out, because they would run out of food eventually, and then they'd have to give up. Or they would get them all into the city, and they would have siege weapons where they would throw boulders and all of those old school movies we've seen on TV where they're launching trebuchets into the city. But the main thing was starving them out, to get them out. And they took Lachish with this tremendous force in less than a month, according to what the historian said. So while this is happening, we have three things that the people did, that Judah did. First, they looked to Egypt. Isaiah 30, verses 1 through 2. Woe to the rebellious children, says the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they might add sin to sin, that walk to go down to Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. Israel and Judah had a tendency to trust in Egypt. They did this many, many, many times. Even in their journey, they were always looking back, to go back to Egypt. Now here, they're seeking a strategic alliance with Egypt because they needed help and so forth, and that was their tendency. Hezekiah clearly did not have an easy time with his people that he was reigning in. He was a righteous king. He was doing all that he thought he should, but there was still this push to get this alliance with Egypt. Now, what do we know? Egypt signifies the world, right? Egypt signifies going back into the world after being taken out, after Passover and so forth. People even started wearing Egyptian clothing to try to look like the Egyptians and so forth. So the leader is apprehended, but the people were content to settle with that lower standard. They were attempting to trust in political alliances rather than trusting in the Lord. Egypt had a huge army. They were known for their chariots and their horses and their cavalry. And that leads us to the next part. They trusted in horses and chariots. They looked to Egypt. They looked to those horses. They looked to the might of their army. Isaiah 31, 1 through 3. Woe to them that go down to Egypt for help and stay on horses and trust in chariots, because they are many, and in horsemen, because they are very strong. But they look not unto the Holy One of Israel, neither seek the Lord. Yet he also is wise and will bring evil and will not call back his words, but will arise against the house of the evildoers and against the help of them that walk in iniquity. Now the Egyptians are men and not God, and their horse flesh and not spirit. When the Lord shall stretch out his hand, both he that helps shall fall, and he that is holden shall fall, and they shall all fail together. Horses, chariots, horsemen. Speaking of our own strength, our own abilities, we've got a big enough army, we can take care of this. We can align with Egypt. They've got a big enough army, they can help us. Because the Assyrians were known for a very large cavalry. Egypt was also known for their chariots and their horses and their mighty power. So Judah says, well, let's align with Egypt and maybe we can even out the score a bit. And they look to the chariots and the horses instead of God. We as human beings are prone to, if we're not careful, trusting in our own means of some sort. Chariots were a very advanced form of technology back then. But what do we trust in as humans today? We look to our own technology, our own way of doing things, our own strength. instead of going to God and leaning and trusting in his mercy. Psalm 33:17 says, the war horse is a false hope for salvation, and by its great might, it cannot rescue. Psalm 20, verse 7, some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we trust in the name of our God. Psalm 20, verse 7. Now, what's the big deal about horses? Like I said, they signify our own strength. They signify this trust in man, our own power, our own abilities, if you will. They give a sense of pride to it, to the point where it's even in one of the laws of the kings from Deuteronomy 17 that a king should not accumulate a vast amount of horses because of the false sense of security it gives you. And you can find that in Deuteronomy 17, verse 19. Only he must not acquire many horses for himself, or cause the people to return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses, since the Lord has said unto you, you shall never return that way again, looking to our own strength. So we see two things right away. During this time, when the enemy is invading from the north, the people are going back and looking to Egypt. They're looking to alliances. They're looking to the horses, to the chariots, to their strength. And the Lord is saying that that's not what we should do. Thirdly, 2 Kings 18:13 through 16. Now, in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib finally comes to Syria against all the fenced cities of Judah. And Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria to Lachish. So he's in Lachish now, that city south and west of Jerusalem. That was a very strong and fortified city. It was protecting the path to Jerusalem. So this is where the Assyrians are. And Hezekiah says, verse 14, I have offended you. Return from me. That which you put on me, I will bear. So he has said, I'm not paying your tribute anymore. But now he says, oh, I realize what I've done here. You've demolished one of his main cities in Lachish, and says, I've offended you. What you have told me to do, I will do. And the king of Assyria appointed unto Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver, 30 talents of gold. He says, all right, that's what you owe me to get me to leave. And Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house. At that time did Hezekiah cut off the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord and from the pillars, which Hezekiah, king of Judah, had overlaid, and gave it to the king of Israel. So they're looking to Egypt. They're looking to the world, alliances. They're looking to horses, human strength, chariots, and now they're looking to gold. Let me buy them off. We can do that as well, can't we? Big bank account, you can feel pretty confident that more zeros are after your bank account. Not a lot can go wrong. According to our own thinking, right? There's plenty that can go wrong, no matter how big your bank account is. We have a tendency to look to money for security, don't we? And that's exactly what they were doing here. Hezekiah says, I'll pay you. I messed up. Here's your money. Just leave us alone. But what do we know happened? Sennacherib took his money and then still kept going towards Jerusalem. The Bible records Hezekiah paid him 300 talents of silver. This is a tremendous sum. He had to desecrate the temple to get it. And even after that payment was made, Sennacherib renewed his assault on Jerusalem.